Hello, everyone. It's Michael Chambers here. I'm going to come clean on a few things and help you understand, help you give you some ideas about whether or not you can trust what I'm saying, which is difficult when you can't meet somebody. First of all, I have said that I was moving to undisclosed locations to protect my safety, and that well, at the time I said that I meant it, but then I just couldn't. I had so much to do, and I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I thought, you know what, I just what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to stay here. I haven't moved, and obviously it's difficult then for anybody who does want to threaten my safety to accuse me of lying because I mean they've been spying on me. So anyway, but a solicitor told me, hopefully going to come on to act for me today. Told me that there's nothing to worry about. But I'd really still do want assurances from very powerful people accusing me of libel. Written assurances just say, no, no, we assure you we are not planning anything. We've not heard anything from anybody that there's any plan to hurt you or do anything bad to you, and or we can't confirm that either. Just something, something so that I've got something I can go on. I've got my own personal reasons for needing that for other people's sake. So, and I want to point out to you as well is that I've been spreading allegations of child grooming um, at related to the practices of Opus Dei priests in confession and in spiritual chats and in meetings, councils of Opus Dei, uh, relating to schools, the practices in general. And I've got evidence of seeing that in action where I lived. And the person, one of the people that is still at large and still working in an Opus Dei school in England. And not only have I had no precise rejection of that, okay, nobody said it's not true. The lawyers for Mr. Arrufat-Pujol have not said it's not true. Also, nobody's come and arrested me for malicious libel or whatever it is. At some point, when you keep spreading slanders and libels and you do more and more and more, you know, about really serious things, there's a police matter. It's malicious. And haven't had the slightest inkling of that. Nobody's ever said anything about that to me. Okay, so I just if you think it's that like that, you have to say so. And if you don't, then what does that say about you? So, and I still haven't had assurances from not a single safeguarding officer, not a single institution of all the people I've contacted with my concerns about those allegations I'm making about Fidelis and about some beads are being dealt with. There are endless professionals who are aware of these allegations now, and none of them have contacted me to say we're looking into them or they're being handled by this or the other. Or just saying, we don't regard your complaints as credible in the slightest, and we're not doing anything. Okay, well, you just need something, don't you? You can't just put out these complaints and get nothing back from anybody. It's just incredible. That's why I have to keep going. Because if you know somebody, if you say, "Look, I'm worried that somebody's in danger because of X, Y, Z," credible evidence, you know, and all these responsible professionals with degrees with experience, they don't reply. They don't say anything again and again and again. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Um, so anyway, coming back to me, one of the difficult things that people find difficult about dealing with me is assessing my presentation, my emotional presentation. It's quite deadpan. I can be quite a deadpan comic sometimes. So hard to tell, is he laughing, is he serious or not? So that can come across as frivolous, and I have to be careful about that myself when talking about serious matters. I was watching George Burns, the famous American comedian yesterday, and he's brilliant, and he just didn't skip a beat. So people, but sometimes there's deeper reasons for that kind of chameleon type behavior or expressionless behavior face, lack of emotional display, and they relate to early trauma, and because of this, when you're separated from your mother at birth and then put in an orphanage like I was for 6 months, you don't have that kind of feedback like that, looking at your mum's face and mum looking at you, and that natural feedback which helps to stimulate the brain development that gives you that emotional regulation and that natural emotional reaction. That's really crucial. That's why nowadays there are fewer and fewer orphanages, because people realize that babies need their mums, and they're supporting babies to stay there with their mums. And I'm sure the Catholic Children's Society does that. And in fact, I learned recently that the orphanage in Latin America that I've got a place at is more about that than about orphanages, orphans. These days they look after teenage mothers and have daycare centres for that. And somehow I'll be somehow involved in helping out practically with them if I manage to go. That is so. Um, so the other thing is that in my case, I was circumcised at a week old, when I was obviously in that orphanage myself in the Catholic Children's Society in London. And um, that's a very serious thing. That causes complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Complex because it's pre-verbal, it's before the development of your of your emotional architecture. And there are many stories of nurses watching circumcisions of babies, seeing that baby's going from normal emotion to sort of absolute, you know, by the end just looking inert. And they see, just in one operation, they see the difference between a relatively healthy emotional baby and someone who's turned into a kind of zombie. And that's not just once, that's the fact that people would say that and witness that is a sign of when it happens. We do, and that happens also with. And I don't know if I don't know who. I think it's partly because of lack of anesthetic. I don't know to what extent it was necessary. I heard it was for me. It was medical. It wasn't religious or anything. But there are many people who have boys who have that for religious reasons, and girls have terrible things too with FGM. It's amazing what people do to each other in the name of religion. What trauma what they inflict on babies in the name of religion. Okay. And so this talking about causing devastating emotional stunting damage at a very early age, and therefore from then on you're reliant on your cognitive brain to make your way through life, and you're just kind of working out how to what the right way to relate to somebody is, and what to say to that person, and how to get a reaction from that person, and hopefully one day someone will love you. Do you know what I mean? It's like that, and that is comes across as manipulative. Okay. And that is an accusation adoptees face a lot, a lot, a lot, especially when reuniting with birth parents, that we're manipulative. I faced it. I faced it from both sides of my birth families. And I thought, oh, why? I don't understand that. I don't understand, you know. So, but there's something about the kind of the subconscious that screams that, that screams, and I want contact, I want relationship, I want interaction. And that's partly why I find it so hard when nobody writes back to me about serious things. So there's this frustration, come on, please, please see me, please just acknowledge me. And we all want to be acknowledged, but that acknowledgement is much more primal. That lack of acknowledgement is a much more primal thing for babies relinquished at birth, and orphan babies. And you hear stories about orphanages in places in countries where kids have been left, they're still there for years. And even if you go and visit them, the staff will say don't pick them up, because there's nothing you can do. It only deceives them. That only deceives them, and it's actually safer not to try. And that's terrible, isn't it? And that's those kids grow up to be either often in many cases, grossly abusive or grossly abused or both. You know, the men might end up in violence and gangs and prostitution rings, and the women might end up prostitutes or terribly abused in different ways. Not having any family to back them either, and um, so this is the sad situation of infant adoption, and it still happens in the USA. There's still infant adoption going on. Incredible. I thought, it's, as a normal practice. So there's a much bigger issues in the USA, and also circumcision of infants is a much bigger thing in the USA for medical reasons and for obviously religious reasons. So so anyway, the bottom line is if I come across as manipulative, as chameleon type, as frivolous, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to kind of jumpstart my brain and get healing. Okay, and it is happening slowly but surely. But I can't get there quickly. I'm 53. I've done pretty well for my age. A lot of adoptees don't really feel normal till their 60s. There's quite a lot of research on that too. So depends. Everybody's different. But if you do know adoptees, you might see a pattern there of this kind of slightly unnatural reactions, and it's the same with psychopaths. Psychopaths are often have incredibly traumatic pasts, and it doesn't just justify their actions, but um, it explains them to some degree. And I just think I don't know the situation. There are people that have different traumas to me. So people in Opus Dei, for example, who are born into Opus Dei, their families created them because they were encouraged in Opus Dei by Opus Dei groomer priests and lay directors. They're encouraged to have huge families. It's a particular issue for the female married members. Apparently, according to Saint Josemaria Escrivá, the founder of Opus Dei, you become a saint when you have your eighth child. But of course, then there's countless testimonies of the idea to show that really the whole point of Opus Dei priests and lay leaders getting people to have large families is to breed more numeraries, more celibates, elite celibates, like I was. I wasn't much celibate, but that's the point, large families. It's the same. It was similar in Ireland. I wanted to have a priest. My family's not Irish, so I can say something about Ireland. It's not my person. I'm not culturally Irish, but in the bad old days of the Catholic Church in Ireland, you had large families, and it was a great honour if one of your children was a priest, and lots of men were effectively chosen by their families and by the church to become priests to be an honour for that family. And that's terrible as well. And those priests went on to do terrible things because they were coerced. So when you're coerced, that's what you know, and you coerce others. And so going back to Opus Dei um, children, there's this pipeline of becoming conceived for Opus Dei reasons, growing up in an Opus Dei family with two parents who are Opus Dei, or your a lot of your family are Opus Dei or linked to Opus Dei. And then going to an Opus Dei school, Opus Dei boys clubs, and then you get into 14 and a half, and then by that point you've been groomed to think about a relationship with a vocation to Opus Dei. Okay, and this is much more natural for somebody. It's not natural. It's much more. It makes sense for somebody who's had no other life than Opus Dei. It's tragic. It's tragic, but they're toxic, and it's not their fault largely. Okay, and I say that not to excuse them, and then if they need to go to prison for some time, they need to go to prison. But God knows, only God knows the circumstances of each person. So I've been very open about the fact that the priest, the numerary priest at um, the many numerary priests, Spanish ones especially, Catalan ones, have, you know, have been in a situation where they've been groomed to give their lives to Opus Dei as teens, 14 and a half, 15, 16, 17. And this is this is the leadership of Opus Dei in this country. A large percentage of the leadership, no, in the world, in the world, you've got this hardcore of several thousand, I don't know how many thousand, mostly Spanish or Spanish speaking um, priests or celibates who've got this mentality, and it's rock hard. They can all reinforce each other all day long, and at the end of the day, the reality is that they can't imagine anything else. It's appalling. Their life has been taken away from them, and they'll do anything to say that that's God's will, and as a result, everybody else has to follow their idea of God's will. So, and there's enough people in enough countries spending time with each other enough times, they learn all the tricks and all the manipulation and everything. So I have to understand that too, that these guys may be extremely toxic, but they've got their history too. So, and I will be there for them to the extent that they let me, my human capacities, because I want to understand everybody. And so if there's anybody like that that's listening into this, watching this video, I extend an olive branch and I say sorry if I've hurt you. Okay, I hope you understand one day why I had to do what I had to do. It's for you too. If you can find a way to work with me, find a back channel to meet me, and to find a way through that minimizes disruption, minimizes loss of face, means that the kids of the schools in England and other Opus Dei schools around the world aren't going to have to deal with bad press on Monday morning when they go back to school, or at least it's somehow managed. Just think about them too. Think about the kids, the current kids of the schools. Most of whom will be oblivious to the targeting of some of their number. Um, so so please listen. Please work with me. Please see me as understand me a bit more. If you still don't understand me, please meet me. Try and meet me in a safe place. I don't bite. I don't have any boxing or wrestling or martial arts qualifications. I don't have anybody that will actually be with me to do anything. To be honest, I don't have any. I have friends that support me, but nobody that will stand next to me. But I will stand alone, and I will support others as much as I can. And if you think that me that's being a manipulative martyr, then I can't I can't help that. I can't help that. So thank you for listening.